All right, the next thing we're going to be doing is writing the factored form of an equation from a graph. Now, if you think back, we've seen problems like this before. Factor p squared plus p minus 72. And in the past, in order to do that, what we would do is we would take a, b, and c. We'd have to find those. So in this case, a would be 1, b would be 1, c would be negative 72. Then we would take a times c is negative 72, and then we'd need all the things that will multiply together to give that. That'd be 1 and 72, 2 and 36, 3 and 24, 4 and 18, 6 and 12, and then 8 and 9. So we'd get this giant list of all those things, except it's negative, so we know we'd have to have another one of those. And this is probably bringing flashbacks back to you, like Vietnam vet style flashbacks of things that you thought we were done with. So here we'll make all these negative, and here we'll make all these negative, and we need two things that are going to add up to b, and so we look and we need the two things that'll add up to b, and that would be this one, negative 8 and negative 9, and so we'd rewrite this, and I'm going to stop there before you guys just shut off the video and don't care anymore. What we're going to look at now is a faster way to do this using the techniques that we just learned. So it's the same process as this in the sense that you're going to get the same answer. However, how we're going to do it is much, much faster. So this video is going to be less on the technique of how to do that and more where it comes from and why we could use it. So first, let's think about what factoring means. Factoring means we're going to take this and we're going to turn it into a multiplication problem, something times something else. And what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of what it means to solve one of these. If I solve this equation, so to solve this, what I would do is I would set it equal to 0. So I would say 0 equals p squared plus p minus 72. And then what I can do is I can just take my calculator and go ahead and solve that. There's nothing overly complex on that. We just did it by graphing, so that's like nice and easy even. I can throw this in there. Ooh, not a negative sign, but rather a minus sign. Graph that, and then we can just look at the solutions, and we can say one solution is going to be x equals negative 9, and the other solution is going to be x equals 8. So that was quick. All I had to do to solve that was that. Now here's where it gets beautiful, and excuse me, rather than x, let's make that a p like it should be. Forgive me that. We're going to use all this fact to help us with this. We said we're going to turn this into a multiplication problem. And in our multiplication problem, we know that when p is negative 9 or p is equal to 8, that this is equal to 0. So let's stop and think, what has to happen in order for something to multiply together and equal 0? Because remember, in our factored form, we're going to get 0 equals something times something else. Well, if it's going to equal 0, either this has to equal 0 or this has to equal 0. One or the other. So if we take, doesn't matter what, 0 times 6 is still 0. So anything that makes that 0 is going to make all that equal 0. And so we're going to leverage this to factor. So check this out. I know that when p equals negative 9, this thing has to equal 0. So let's check this out. What can I add or subtract from p to make it equal to 0? Well, p is negative 9, so if I add 9 to p, it's going to be equal to 0. So p plus 9 equals 0. So when p equals negative 9, this should equal 0, just like I found here. Likewise over here, we can use our other solution, and we can say that when p equals 8, this thing has to equal 0. Well, if I take p and subtract 8, when p is 8, that'll be 8 minus 8, which is 0, and this whole thing will multiply out to be 0. So that was a lot of words, and I'm not even sure those words were particularly helpful. Let's take another run at this. We want to factor this. Factoring means turn into two things multiplied by each other. There it is. We also know how to solve this. If we set it equal to 0, we know that this will be equal to 0 when p is -9 and when p is 8. So now we're going to combine those two facts. If when p equals -9, this thing equals 0, and this p over here, when this p is -9 and I add 9 to it, I get a 0 there. 0 times anything is 0. So I know that has to be one of the factors. Same thing, when p equals 8, this equals 0. And so now if I substitute an 8 in right there, what I'm going to get is 0. So what I can do now is I can take any expression that I want to factor, and by solving it and using these solutions, I can factor it very quickly. It's just going to be whatever one solution is, and then its opposite number, and then whatever the other solution is, and its opposite number. Now, I don't expect this to make perfect sense on the first go round. Looking at several example problems is going to help this, but this is generally what we're doing. We're wanting to take and factor this expression using our solutions, and your example videos will show you exactly how to do that.